The scent of leather and new car smell still clung to the air as I walked into Jensen and Associates, a stupid grin plastered on my face. The day before had been a milestone. After years of grinding, late nights fueled by instant coffee, and sacrificing every luxury, I'd finally done it. I'd bought the Ferrari. Not just any Ferrari, but a gleaming, fire-engine red Ferrari Roma. It was a symbol, a testament to my hard work, a tangible representation of the heights I'd reached. It was also, damn it, just beautiful. I'm a black man, and unfortunately, in my experience, achievements like mine often come with unwanted attention. I'd worked twice as hard to get half as far as some of my colleagues, fought against subtle biases and outright prejudice. This car, in a way, was my middle finger to all of that. A silent, roaring, I did it anyway, to the people who doubted me. I parked it in my usual spot, right near the entrance, the red paint practically screaming against the mundane grays and silvers of the other cars. I knew it was a bit ostentatious, but I couldn't resist. I wanted to bask in the feeling of it, the sheer joy of owning something I'd dreamt about for so long. My workday was, thankfully, relatively uneventful. I focused on my projects, the steady hum of my computer and the clatter of keyboards a familiar backdrop. But even amidst spreadsheets and conference calls, my mind kept drifting back to the Ferrari. I imagined the envious glances it was drawing, the appreciative nods of passers-by. I couldn't wait to get back behind the wheel and feel the power surge as I accelerated onto the open road. As the clock ticked towards 5, a sense of anticipation built within me. I packed up my briefcase, a spring in my step. Today, I was going to take the long way home, cruise along the coast, and let the wind whip through my hair. It was a promise I'd made to myself, a celebration of a dream realized. I practically skipped out of the office building, eager to reunite with my prized possession. But the joyful bubble I was in burst before I even reached the parking lot. I could see her from a distance. Karen Crawford, the bane of our homeowners association, standing beside my car. Even from afar, her rigid posture and furrowed brow radiated negativity. I braced myself. This wasn't going to be good. As I drew closer, I could hear her voice, shrill and laced with an unsettling mix of self-righteousness and barely concealed venom. She was on her phone, gesturing wildly in my direction. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Karen Crawford had a reputation, and it wasn't a pleasant one. She was the kind of HOA president who weaponized bylaws, scrutinized every lawn for rogue blades of grass, and, unfortunately, had a history of discriminatory behavior towards minority residents. I'd heard the whispers, the stories of unfair fines and nitpicky complaints. I'd even witnessed some of it firsthand. She had a knack for finding fault, for making people feel unwelcome. My stomach clenched as I approached the Ferrari. She ended her call abruptly, snapping her phone shut with a decisive click. She turned to face me, her eyes narrowed, a smug smirk playing on her lips. "Ah, Mr. Jensen," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Perfect timing." "Karen," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "Is there a problem?" She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Problem? No, Mr. Jensen. There's a solution. This," eyes the car up and down with disgust, "this vehicle has been sold." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Sold? What are you talking about? I own this car." I gestured towards the gleaming red machine. "I bought it yesterday." "That's where you're wrong," she said, her voice rising in pitch. "This car has been deemed inappropriate for this community. Too flashy, too ostentatious. It violates the aesthetic guidelines of the HOA." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Aesthetic guidelines? Are you serious? This is my personal property. You can't just sell my car. "Oh, but I can," she retorted, crossing her arms over her chest. "As president of the HOA, I have the authority to enforce these guidelines. And this," eyes it up and down again, this eyesore is simply not acceptable. The buyer is on their way to pick it up now. You'll need to remove your belongings. My blood began to boil. This wasn't about aesthetics, this was about power, about control, about her blatant disregard for my rights as a homeowner, as a person. And, let's be honest, there was definitely a racial component to this. I'd always suspected her prejudice, and now it was staring me right in the face, wrapped in a shiny red package. "You're insane," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You have no authority to do this. This is theft. I am calling the police." I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Karen just scoffed, as if daring me. I quickly dialed 911, and the dispatcher answered. 911, what is your emergency? "I need to report a theft," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "The president of my homeowners association is claiming to have sold my car without my permission. She says someone is coming to pick it up right now." I gave the dispatcher my location and a description of Karen Crawford and the car. The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way. As I waited, Karen continued her tirade, her voice growing louder and more frantic. "You can't do this, Mr. Jensen," she shrieked. "You're harassing me. I'm the president of the HOA, I have the right to maintain order in this community." "Order?" I scoffed. "This isn't about order, Karen. This is about you abusing your power because you don't like me, or my car, or the fact that I'm a black man who can afford something you probably can't." Her face turned a shade of red that rivaled my Ferrari. "That's absurd," she yelled. "This has nothing to do with race. It's about maintaining property values. Then why didn't you say anything about the other expensive cars in the neighborhood?" I challenged. "Why single out mine? Because it's driven by someone you don't think belongs here?" Before she could respond, a police car pulled into the parking lot, sirens blaring briefly before cutting off. 2 officers emerged, their faces grim. I felt a surge of relief. Finally, someone was here to stop this madness. One of the officers, a young woman with a stern expression, approached us. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, her eyes scanning the scene. I gestured towards Karen. "This woman is claiming to have sold my car without my consent. She says she's the president of the HOA and has the authority to do so, but that's ridiculous. I have the title, I have the keys. This is my car." Karen immediately jumped in, her voice dripping with indignation. "Officer, this man is harassing me. I sold his car because it violates the HOA guidelines, and now he's making false accusations and causing a scene. He's being aggressive and threatening. I feel very unsafe." I could see the officer's expression shift slightly. She'd clearly dealt with Karen Crawford before. "Ma'am, please calm down. Let's hear Mr. Jensen's side of the story." I explained the situation to the officers, carefully and calmly recounting the events of the past hour. I emphasized that I had just purchased the car, that I had the title and registration to prove it, and that Karen had absolutely no legal basis for selling it. I also mentioned her history of discriminatory behavior and the whispers I'd heard about her abuse of power. The female officer listened intently, occasionally glancing at Karen, who was pacing back and forth, muttering about property values and HOA regulations. When I finished, the officer turned to Karen. "Mrs. Crawford, is what Mr. Jensen is saying true? Did you sell his car without his permission?" Karen's face was a mask of righteous indignation. "I acted within my authority as HOA president," she declared. "That car was a blight on the community. I had a buyer lined up, and I did what was necessary to protect the property values of this neighborhood." The officer sighed. "Mrs. Crawford, you do not have the authority to sell someone's personal property simply because you don't like it. That's not how HOAs work. In fact, what you did is a crime." The other officer, a burly man with a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to calm down and cooperate with us. We've received complaints about you before, and this is escalating quickly. Karen completely lost it at this point. She started screaming, her voice cracking with hysteria. You're all against me. You're all siding with him because he's. She trailed off, unable to voice her true feelings, but the implication was clear. Suddenly, she lunged towards me, her nails outstretched. You're ruining my life, she screamed, swiping at my face. The officers reacted instantly. The male officer grabbed her arm, while the female officer quickly pulled out her taser. Ma'am, stand down. Do not resist. But Karen was beyond reason. She continued to struggle, kicking and screaming, her eyes wild with rage. The officer had no choice. She deployed the taser, and Karen crumpled to the ground, her body convulsing. The scene was chaotic. Karen lay on the pavement, groaning and twitching. The officers quickly secured her in handcuffs and called for an ambulance. I stood there, stunned, watching as the paramedics loaded her onto a stretcher. The whole situation felt surreal, like a bad dream. The female officer approached me, her expression apologetic. Mr. Jensen, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. We've had issues with Mrs. Crawford before, but this is a whole new level. You were completely within your rights to call us. We'll take care of everything from here. She explained that Karen would be charged with assault, theft, and potentially other crimes related to her abuse of power as HOA president. She also assured me that the buyer, who was supposedly coming to pick up the car, would be contacted and informed that the sale was illegal. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, a sense of relief washed over me. The truth had prevailed. Karen's lies had been exposed, and she was finally being held accountable for her actions. But the incident had shaken me. It was a stark reminder that prejudice and injustice were still alive and well, even in seemingly ordinary places like a suburban homeowners association. The officers took my statement and gathered all the necessary information. They were incredibly professional and helpful throughout the entire process. Before they left, the female officer gave me her card. If you experience any further harassment from Mrs. Crawford or anyone else related to this, please don't hesitate to call us. I thanked them profusely and watched as they drove away, their lights fading into the distance. I was left standing alone in the parking lot, staring at my Ferrari, the gleaming red paint a stark contrast to the turmoil I was feeling inside. I unlocked the car, slid into the driver's seat, and took a deep breath. The scent of leather and new car smell was still there, but it was now mixed with the lingering scent of fear and anger. I started the engine, the powerful roar a welcome sound. I needed to get out of here, to put as much distance as possible between myself and Karen Crawford. The aftermath of the incident was swift and decisive. Karen Crawford was not only arrested, but also immediately fired from her job at the local real estate agency. The news spread like wildfire through the community, and the HOA board quickly held an emergency meeting to remove her from her position as president. A restraining order was put in place, preventing her from coming within 100 feet of me, my home, or my workplace. The HOA also issued a formal apology for her actions, acknowledging her abuse of power and pledging to implement stricter oversight measures to prevent similar incidents from happening in the future. They even offered to pay for the cost of detailing my Ferrari as a gesture of goodwill, but I politely declined. As for the Ferrari, I still drive it. I still love the feeling of freedom and power it gives me. But now, it represents more than just a dream realized. It represents a victory over hate and prejudice, a symbol of resilience and determination. And every time I see that gleaming red paint, I am reminded that even in the face of adversity, justice can prevail. I did end up moving out of the community because I didn't feel safe, but I made sure that Karen Crawford felt the full extent of the law.